Well, it is good to see all of you. And we're going to kick it off just right away. I'm sorry that we were delayed starting up, but here we are. It was unavoidable, but we are here now. And we got a bunch to get through. So let's begin, as it were. What I'm sure a lot of you already know about the lot of us here at RPGClinic is that we're actually all theater professionals. We all studied at university in theater, and we have all been a part of the professional theater community. Some of us are still part of the professional theater community, and the realities, of course, is that right now in Montreal there isn't a whole lot of theater going on, but that doesn't mean that we aren't still part of what we're trying to do in our lives is to bring forward that sort of magic of theater and storytelling. Now, Liz and Scott, both performers, excellent performers in their own right. It's not like that's their only skills. They do plenty of other things, but when it comes to theater, they're on the stage. Kate is a stage manager, an essential role, which essentially a stage manager's job is to fix everything. That's not quite the case, but the role of a stage manager, or at least part of the role of a stage manager, is to make sure that everybody is doing what they should be doing, which includes things like safety. And what I've done, I mean, I've been a writer. I've been a performer myself, but one of the things that I've most recently been doing quite a bit of in terms of theater is fight choreography. And when you are doing fight choreography, you have a really cool job. I'm just gonna. Here we go. You have a wrong time to swallow wrong. You have a really cool job because you get to go out there and you get to play with weapons with other people who enjoy having other people look at them playing with weapons. And the reality is that when you go up on stage, you can't really go up on stage using the sort of weapons that you might find at your typical LARP. Instead, we have weapons like this. So this is one of the swords that I actually own. That's part of my own collection, and it is made of proper metal, proper steel. Although you can see that at the very end, it's got a blunted tip. But I will point out that if this thing, which is currently reflecting light and so therefore screwing up my green screen, if this thing actually stabbed you, it could do a lot of damage. And if I snapped the tip of this, then it could be as effective as a sword that was sharp on its own. I also have I have knives as part of what I use to train and practice with individuals. Knives that have I mean, these are rubber training knives, but this is still very, very kind of hard in a lot of ways. And while it won't cut, it is quite stiff. And if I were to stab somebody with it, I could actually still hurt somebody quite a bit. Now, I'm not showing these things to you because I'm trying to prove about how cool a collection I have. My collection is actually, in terms of weapons, not that big, and nor is it all that impressive. I keep these weapons because if I'm headed to an extremely low budget production where they don't have their own weapons, then I at least have something to show them so that I can tell them that this is what you're going to need in order to rent or whatever. I don't do enough fight choreography work to justify having my own armory to rent out. But yes, and blended swords can injure somebody. You can't see, but here, there you go. Here, you wouldn't be able to see it. I'd have to actually get very close to the camera, and then you wouldn't have the light on it. But I do have a sword fighting scar on my face from boffer fighting from a weapon that wasn't properly maintained. Now, the reason why I'm bringing out these weapons to show you right now is to point out that my job, more than anything else, when I walk into a room full of people wanting to perform fight choreography, is to make sure that at the end of the day, they go home safe. It is not my job to make them look good or to teach them how to be flashy, more than making sure that they go home safe. I have actors who have asked me, I can actually just take the hit. It will be more realistic. I can take a punch. It's fine. Or I can actually do this, which will, I can actually make contact with their face. And as long as we time it correctly and he moves the head, then it'll just roll off his head. I've done it before. It's fine. And I can't let them do that, because I can tell them that you can have one really cool moment on stage, and that's the last one that you'll be able to give the audience. At best, you finish out the show. At worst, your performance stops right then and there. And then you don't get to do another one because you are injured or worse. Safety ends up being the most important part of my job. And in fact, that means that it also ends up being the most important part of Kate's job as well. As a stage manager, one of the things that Kate has to do is make sure that everybody is following the appropriate safety guidelines that are set out by various different unions, Equity in Canada here, or UDA, for performers in theater, ACTRA for Canadian actors on screen or recordings. In the States, you have Equity, but you also have the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, and yeah, Captain Buzzkill. No, you can't have that gorgeous set without a railing. So that becomes Kate's most important job as well, safety. And then you have to turn to Liz and Scott, performers on stage, and their job, ostensibly, would be to make sure that they can tell a story to an entire audience, so they can get up there and they can have a grand old time showing it off. But the reality, even if it isn't the first thing that you think of, is that their job is to be safe, to make sure that they can come back day after day and put on the same performance. Well, not the same performance, every performance is different, but to be able to come back and give another performance to an audience instead of making sure that it's the last one that they can give. In theater, the most important job is safety, and it is everybody's job. And then we can extrapolate from that and say that perhaps this is what will happen in most jobs or all jobs, right? If you work in a store and somebody sloshes soapy water all over the ground, someone is going to have to make sure that that's taken care of so that you don't have somebody slipping and falling. If you're working as an airline pilot, your job is to make sure that the plane lands safely on the ground. Safety is an important thing for every job. But then we can take that into our real lives, and we can think that when you are a parent, it is your job to keep your children safe. When you are out with your friends and you see that they are engaged in dangerous behavior, then it could be your job to make sure that they stay safe. Take somebody's keys if they've drank too much. Make sure to keep them secure if they get sick while you're out. We're constantly looking out for each other's safety. In some jobs, it becomes important enough that we have to develop rules for it. In my job specifically, when I'm dealing with weapons that could actually hurt somebody, I have very, very specific rules that I have to go over with everybody. And because a lot of the fight choreography that I do is actually tailored towards younger actors, I have to make it interesting for them. I got to make sure that when they come out and they're ready to go and they're hyped to get a hold of these weapons and to start fighting, I have to say, like, hey, so here's the deal. I have a perfect record. Nobody's died in one of the productions that I've worked on, and I'd like to keep that record. And the way that I keep that record is that if they stop being safe and they don't listen to me, I walk. And they get it. They get it immediately. And the reality is that they get to have more fun when they're being safe than not. The reason why they're having more fun is because all of a sudden they realize that they can keep doing it and that they can keep learning and keep playing and keep experimenting and keep moving forward as long as they abide by a few simple rules to make sure that everybody gets to go home at the end of the day. Because otherwise, I disappear. I'm not interested in trying to work on fight choreography with people who are not interested in being safe. So, where does that leave role-playing? When I started role-playing far too many years ago, this wasn't even a thing that we would talk about. It was assumed that the normal rules of engagement of social interaction kind of were suspended when you were role-playing. Your character wants to act like a jerk? That's okay. Even though we don't normally act like jerks towards our friends, it's in the context of a role-playing game. It's in its own virtual machine, its own tiny little sectioned off area. And so therefore, it was safe. Because no matter what happened in that little box, it wasn't meant to reflect how things happened in the real world. Unfortunately, that's not really a correct way of looking at things. Because as we roleplay, we're investing ourselves into our characters, into the story, into the narrative. And as we do those things, by investing ourselves, we become vulnerable. That vulnerability is part of what makes roleplaying so exciting and so deeply immersive, and part of how it can really affect us and make us remember things for the rest of our lives based on our career in roleplaying. And who here is ancient enough to start role-playing the previous millennia? I mean, quite a few of us, I assume. Me, certainly. If we look at ourselves and we think about that kind of vulnerability, that's also why things like love feel so great. The reason why love is so amazing for people is because it also has the capacity to hurt us. In role-playing, we have the ability to really put ourselves out there, but it means that we are taking risks. And in any activity in which we're taking risks, we have the option, and in fact the responsibility, to do so safely. If I get on a skateboard, I don't have to wear a helmet. I don't have to put on knee pads or wrist guards or elbow pads. I can just step on a skateboard. I am physically capable of doing so. But I probably shouldn't. I'm not that great a skater. In fact, haven't really skated at all. So if I get up on that skateboard, I might have a great time for about 2 seconds, but what happens when I fall? Maybe I'll just get a couple of scrapes, and I can get up and say, well, I had fun, and this hurts right now, but I'll get over it. But I could potentially also fall and break a bone. Or worse, I could collide with somebody else. When it comes to role-playing, it is possible for you to get hurt. And in fact, if you do it for long enough, you probably will be. Even using safety tools, that's unavoidable. Because as with everything that involves risk, there will be a time where it comes your turn to feel that pain. The use of safety tools in role-playing games is to make sure that those events are not only less and less, they happen less and less often, but that when they do happen, the hurt is mitigated and resolved as quickly as possible, that we've protected ourselves. Fall while you're wearing a helmet, and it's still gonna hurt, but it may prevent you from getting a concussion. It may prevent you from splitting your scalp open or breaking your cranium. But that doesn't mean that once you fall, you never get back up and do it again. But because you were wearing the helmet, you can get back up faster. You can get back up with less of a risk that you will be permanently hurt by what has happened before, and knowing that you'll be safe in case it happens again. Thus, when we have safety in role-playing games, it's to make sure that when these moments happen, when we get hurt, it's not going to hurt so badly, and to make sure that we can prevent as much of that hurt before it even happens. One of the main arguments that I've seen against safety tools in role-playing games is this idea that when we are trying to be too safe, it limits us. That it creates an environment in which we're not able to go hard. I grew up role-playing. I grew up role-playing in the 80s and 90s, and in the 90s and in the early 2000s, let me tell you, there was a time in role-playing where it was very, very popular to be extreme in your role-playing. A popularity that still exists to this day, but back then, it was a big deal. And the concept of trying to work around these extremes was antithetical to fun. At least that was the thinking at the time. The idea that I want to be able to feel really hard. I want to be able to scream at my friends. I want to collapse sobbing. I want to be able to grab somebody by the shoulders and shake them in a LARP. I want to be able to kiss somebody because that's what my character would do. I should be able to grope someone because my character is a lech. All kinds of things like this. And the use of safety tools was meant to see, these are the things that I can't do. These are the things that I will no longer be allowed to do. And that's not even really the case. What safety tools do is means it opens up your game to make it so that you can look around and say, I know that I can try something that's a little more out there because I know that everyone else is on the same page with me. I know that if I step a little too far for my own comfort or for someone else's, I have the tools to recognize this and be able to pull back before I do any serious damage. But because I have these limits in place and because I'm wearing this protective padding around myself, I can take those risks gladly, knowing that I'm not going to do serious harm. So, he's the oldest of us four. I started with RPGs as a kid. When I say 80s, I was still quite young. I was a precocious child. So, this is what we do. We roleplay, and we enjoy it. But here, among us at RPG Clinic, we've really started taking safety tools more and more to heart. Where at first we had safety that we sort of established, but without any kind of major borrowing from other people's systems or codifying it. We would just discuss things vaguely and make sure that we would be like, hey, are you okay? And that was it. But now we use safety tools in a much more deliberate fashion. And we've realized that we probably should have been doing this all along. Today, I'm hoping that we can talk about this so that we can encourage all of you to start using safety tools if you don't already, to find out about the safety tools that you may want to use if you're looking for ones that might fit your group better. And then finally, we have our own system that we have been developing. You've seen the beginnings of it if you've been watching our streams, but we're now getting close to the point where our designed system, based on the works of others before us, we're hoping that we might be able to get this to a point where we can start distributing it across the gaming community, not as the tool that will beat all tools, but as a tool that we think matches our personal gaming style and might match yours as well. And if it does, we're hoping that you'll be able to use it, perhaps even refine and improve upon it, so that your games can take the risks that can make that kind of vulnerability feel so wonderful when you're gaming. This preamble aside, I'm not going to get into all safety tools this time around. There are a lot of them out there. They're definitely worth checking out, and you can find them simply by looking for an RPG safety toolkit, which is a PDF which will list a whole bunch of them. Monty Cook Games released an entire consent in gaming platform PDF that you can have a look at as well. I can't go over all of them. What I can do is tell you the ones that we use and then go into our design. When we go into our design, what I'm hoping is that you in the audience will be able to respond, to let us know what you think. Not every tool is going to be for you. And obviously, if you can recognize that this tool isn't going to be appropriate for your group, that's fine. We can't make a tool that will suit everybody, but we may be able to get feedback from you to further refine what we've got before our release. So, with that, let's get started with the first safety tool that we use. And the most common one, I think, that is starting to sort of spring up in a lot of games are lines and veils. Lines and veils, as a safety tool, happens mostly at the beginning of a campaign, but it still remains relevant throughout and can continually be adjusted as necessary. Lines and veils are the concepts that we either don't mind having as part of the game as long as they're only vaguely described or alluded to, or the concepts that we want no part of the game at all. A line is something that we say no, absolutely not. And each player, including the storyteller or whoever is running the game, gets to define for themselves what they don't want to see in a game. Your lines can be hardcore things that you don't want to see. Gore, violence. One of my lines very specifically is sexual violence. I will not have them in any game that I play in. And it is possible that when you are stating your lines, someone may state a line that will disappoint you because you really wanted to bring that element into the game. Remember that when you're discussing your lines and veils, this is not really so much of a negotiation. You can't ask somebody to not have a line. But what you can do is make sure that the game that's going to be run is appropriate for everyone. If you're running a Call of Cthulhu game, which invests very heavily into horror tropes, and someone says that one of their lines is horror, well, then it might be an indication that this game isn't right for them, and you should be playing either a different game or that player perhaps should not be participating in this one. Lines can involve something that's very heavy, but they can involve things that are very light. What matters is if you state it. If one of the things that you've said that is a line for you is something simple, such as, I don't want anybody to consume candy in this game. You do not need to justify why this is a line for you, but you have stated it, and other players can react to it as they see fit. But if it's a line, it doesn't show up, which means that if you say that no candy in this game, means that characters cannot have candy, even mention candy, or to a certain degree come even close to it. But then you have a veil. A veil is something that's more akin to, I don't mind if this is part of the game, but I'd really rather it happens off camera. One of the most common veils that I've seen in games, for instance, is sex. The existence of sex, the acknowledgement of sex, is fine in a game, but if two characters are going to actually have sex, then that is a veil that people use because they don't want explicit descriptions of sex acts as part of their role-playing experience. So instead, if two characters are about to hook up, then it's merely described as, and then they both go into a room and they close the door, and what you imagine happens. We don't go into detail. We don't go specific into those sorts of things, but we do recognize that it occurred. Other examples of this could be torture. Perhaps you are okay with the concept of torture, but you do not want descriptions as to what exact acts are being performed upon the victim. Maybe you have a veil that's more along the lines of things like alcohol or substance abuse, that you acknowledge that these things occur and that you're fine with them coming up in game, but that you don't want to see somebody who is directly under the influence of alcohol. These are examples of veils that you can use for yourself as well when you're running or playing your games. Lines and veils can also change. They can change mid-session if necessary, and you are allowed to update your other players, your fellow players at the table, if you find that something has either made it onto your list or can be taken off. It is always possible for someone to say, I was not comfortable with the idea of discussing, say, sex in games, and it was a line for me, but now I realize that I'm more comfortable with it than I thought, so let's have it more of a veil. Or perhaps you've discovered that candy is just fine for you, and no longer does it need to be a line or a veil, and that you want to have descriptions of characters chowing down on all kinds of sugary treats all day, every day. Think of lines and veils as a form of consent. and I'm sure that you've seen examples of consent being compared to tea, that just because you ask for tea doesn't necessarily mean that you have to drink it. Just because you were okay with tea yesterday doesn't mean that you want to have it today. Just because you didn't want tea now doesn't mean that you won't want it again in the future. All of these things apply for lines and veils. The important thing is that you not pressure players to change their lines and veils. They can make their own decisions as to what they want to see and not want to see in a game. So Requiem, you've got a question here. We'll call that up. Perhaps an obvious question, but I thought I'd just ask for clarification. Can lines and veils also apply to people at the table in general? For example, I have a line that no one swear. Perhaps not the best example. So it's a fine example. And while lines and veils, as originally defined, were like elements of game content, yes, these can fall under lines and veils. You could say, I'm only comfortable participating in a game if, for instance, no one is eating unhealthy food because I'm trying to cut back on my own eating habits. So I'd rather that, we not order, ridiculous amounts of pizza every game, because otherwise I'm going to feel like I'll break my diet, and I don't want to do that. These are things that you can bring up. Lines and veils may not be the best way to describe them, depending on what they are, because technically if something is a line, then it can't be discussed at all. But you could potentially use it that way if that's something that you want. One of the important things about safety tools is to use them as your group requires, to modify them as your group needs, just as long as everybody is aware of what those modifications are. So, as Kate said here, I should make sure that I can actually see this button. As Kate says, absolutely, it's a tool to start conversations around the in-character moments so as to not need to break the scene, but it's also a great opportunity to set ground rules out of character as well. So, absolutely. That's a totally appropriate question. There are no inappropriate questions about safety at this point on the stream, so please, if you have any, let us know. And as Kate is saying as well, lines and veils are brought up during a session 0, usually, which is also your chance to discuss tone overall. Session 0 is a safety tool in and of itself. Session 0 is when everybody gets together to discuss what is about to occur. And one of the things that is important to establish in a session 0 are your safety limits and the safety tools that you'll be using in your campaign. Another couple of safety rules that we end up using, which might not seem like safety rules, but they are, is we always have a pre-game ritual that we go through. When we start, we stream our games, so our pre-game ritual takes into account the fact that we're streaming. But when we start, we go through a certain ritual motion of we're going to talk about this, then we're going to talk about this, then we're going to talk about this, and then it becomes clear when we're entering the game. It's a lighter kind of safety tool. This one isn't as critical to like emotional well-being, but it's sort of like warming up before you start doing strong physical activity. Making sure that you can ease your way into the game. We talked about the magic circle on a previous episode. Being able to ease into the game is very important to just make sure that you're not experiencing too much emotional whiplash. That's great to hear, Over the Glen. You're about to see our redesign of it. But I'm very happy to see that. And then what we do at the end of a game, is we come out of our game and we have a certain form of aftercare. We again go through a ritual where we talk about the game. We discuss what we learned. We discuss what we liked about each other's play. And in doing so and making sure that we don't end the game abruptly and say, great, that's it, we all stand up from the table and we leave, is that we're able to process our way out of the game itself. Aftercare is important in the BDSM community because even though the events that you can go through in a BDSM scene can be quite extreme, it's important to also make sure that somebody feels well taken care of and loved after the fact. And the same is true for role-playing. Role-playing may not be the same thing as BDSM most of the time, but there are parallels. And what Kate is also saying, and that it's a great way to at least mitigate bleed, is absolutely true. Bleed being bringing in outside elements of the world into your game, or bringing in-game elements outside into the real world, by being able to bookend these things by creating a magic circle that you have to enter and then exit. It helps really compartmentalize those things and make sure that you understand that what happens in this box is truly belongs in this box. That is something that we always do. We don't tend to start and go right into game. And while this doesn't seem like it's a safety tool, it absolutely is one for us, and something that I do recommend that you do with yours. A ritual does not have to be rote. It does not have to be mechanical, and it definitely doesn't have to be boring. But knowing that there is a certain procedure that you take as you gradually move into game, and then a certain procedure that you take as you gradually move out of game, can really help keep things safe for everybody. Kate's just knocking it out of the park today. So, tough day at work, it can help you move on from it. Intense events in game, it can help you leave it at the table. Exactly. I roleplay as a form of escape in some ways, but it is also important to make sure that when I've had my escape, I can still come back. And I want to enjoy my escape. I don't want to bring the baggage of my previous day before coming in here into this role-playing activity. And those are our major safety tools. We do have rules in place for safety tools, such as the red rule. The red rule stating that any attempt at sexual, any attempt at either seduction or sexual coercion, if the player does not want it to succeed, it automatically does not succeed. This is an example of a tool that is codified in some rule books and is becoming more and more popular. When I say sexual coercion, I'm not even talking about violent stuff. I'm just talking about how certain characters may have certain powers, like charm or an excessive personality, or even just a really high charisma stat, and that shouldn't necessarily force anybody else to get into a sexual situation that they don't want. So there is that. Characters can only be seduced or otherwise put in a sexual situation if the player is okay with it. Otherwise, any such attempt fails automatically. Requiem mentions, I remember doing something similar back during high school in the drama club. I don't remember exactly what we did, but I do remember that we had some ritual after each play to help us bring us back to reality, so to speak. And again, rituals and all safety tools do not have to be dour things. They can be funny or lighthearted. They just have to be taken seriously. Seriously doesn't necessarily mean without levity, or doesn't mean that it has to be boring. Seriously just means that you gotta actually pay attention to it. So Over the Glen says that our group has a house rule of charming and not working from players to players. You need to coerce them in game consent to get it to work. Depending on your group, some groups really love the idea of having agency taken away from their characters temporarily. They like being put in awkward or awful situations. Some players absolutely detest it and never want to see it happen, and some players kind of go back and forth. The trick is to find out what your group wants to do and to let that happen, and to also listen to your group as things go on to see if those feelings may change. And giving them the opportunity to say, well, you can try to seduce this other character, but it's possible that it may fail automatically no matter how good your character's stats are, means that you not only give permission to somebody to try, but you also give permission for somebody to say no. And that's what's important. But we also have our cards. So we have been playing recently with our 3 cards, our green, yellow, and red cards. So this is what you've seen us do at the beginning of all of our sessions in the past while, and what we will now always do in front of our sessions. But we realize that these cards are working quite well for us because we've sort of designed them to work for our gaming sensibilities. Remember that different groups have different kinds of atmospheres at their table, different tones, different tolerances. So this is something that we kind of did. We took work from other safety tool developers and we made it our own. We made it something that we felt could work for us in our situation. Now, once we did that, we realized that we could start further refining this so that we may be able to bring it as a way that we can, instead of just vaguely explaining it at the beginning of our sessions and explaining it occasionally in one of these live streams that we do, that we might be able to make something that other people can use. And so today, that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to see what we can do to present our new design, what we've done to change it from what we've already been explaining, and see what kind of feedback we can get from you. So I can't see myself. Let's make sure that I can get that window up there. Let's see. Because the wrong webcam is selected, so let's put myself back here. There we go, and then we're gonna add this. There we are. Put ourselves back in here so that you can actually see me. There we go. So now I'm here. And as because I screwed that up, we can move forward with what we have. So right now what we've been using are these plastic card dividers. They're in 3 different colors: red, yellow, and green. This is not the correct shade of green. This is the one that I'm using because we are on a green screen. But I'm going to turn the green screen off briefly so that you can see. So it's really just a different shade of green, but that green is so similar to the green behind me that it would get obscured. So we don't use it right away. Now, instead, what we have are these 3 cards. And these 3 cards have been serving us well, but it's time for us to show what we are hoping will be the card system that we'll start using in the future once we finally get all of our designs kind of locked down properly. And I might as well just give you a look so that you can see them all and know how we're planning on trying to distribute them. So what we have is now no longer are we referring to these cards as red, yellow, and green. We're referring to them as play, pause, and stop. Same colors. Green, yellow, and red are still the colors that we're planning on using, but now we've added a couple of accessibility features to these cards in order to make sure that they can work for all kinds of groups. One of the issues with these cards is that they can be difficult for some people to tell the difference between these cards if they are severely colorblind. I'm very minorly colorblind, but I can tell the difference between these 3, but that's not necessarily for everyone. So instead, we've shifted the design of these cards so that instead of relying on their colors, we're relying on already existing things that we know people can react. So let's have a look at these cards and what they're used for. The play card has a circle. Circles generally mean go. We also are using the play symbol, which people can recognize from way back using those audio cassettes or VCRs, but it's still a symbol that's in use today. This way, somebody who can't necessarily see the color green can still see that this card means it's time to keep going. How do we define the play card? You can show the play card without interrupting the game to let everyone know that no matter what's happening in game, you're okay to keep going. Some of the wording that we have, by the way, we're going to have to, the wording is not completely final. because this one also has the word game twice in the sentence, which I don't like, but we'll see. But the play card is specifically, you don't need to interrupt your role playing to let people know that you're having a great time. You can flash the card to show that things are okay. Some examples that you might want to use this: maybe after a particularly nasty argument with another character, you want to make sure that everyone knows that there's no hard feelings out of character. Maybe the emotions are hitting pretty hard and you look like you're upset, tears may be rolling down your face, you may be shaking, but it's in character. You are actually having fun and you're enthusiastic about continuing no matter what your outward appearance looks like. The game is perhaps going in a new direction. Maybe what used to be a lighthearted adventure is taking quite a serious turn, but you're excited by this shift and you want to see what's next. So you can show the play card to let everybody know that you're safe and secure. It takes the guesswork out of people wondering whether you're okay or not. There can't be any confusion about being in character versus out of character when it comes to this card. There's no worries about whether somebody is only going along with it reluctantly. There's no wondering if somebody is not doing okay or if something is wrong. So, this card can also be used to indicate to another player that you're okay, but you would like some assurance that they're okay as well. This actually came up last Exaltwitch Academy session. Kate was wondering if I was okay because I was readjusting the cards that I had in front of me, and because my yellow card was on top, it could have indicated that I was actually considering using a yellow card. She flashed the green card at me, and I knew at that point to flash the green card back to make sure that she knew that I was all right. So, that is the play card. We also have the pause card. The pause card is yellow, much like a yellow traffic light, but it also contains a triangle, which is a universal symbol of warning, and contains the pause symbol, the two vertical bars, which can be recognized by, again, people using audiovisual equipment to know that it's time to pause, but not necessarily stop the action. When you need to warn everyone about something important, especially if you're approaching a personal limit, use the pause card. Once you put it down, game can continue. So some things that you want to share to the table are serious enough that you need everybody's attention. You need everyone to stop what they're doing and give you their full attention. And that means that while this is being held up, the game is temporarily put on hold so that you can let everybody know something that's crucial and out of character, such as during a horror scene, you want to warn people that you're approaching your comfort limit and you'd prefer fewer descriptions of violence. Maybe you've had a really tough week, so you want to make it clear before the session starts that you might need some extra support this session. Or you're about to bring up intense subject matter in game for the first time, and you want to make sure that everybody is okay with what you're about to bring up. You use this card when you don't need the game to come to a halt. You're still okay, but you want to make sure that you stay that way. The game can continue once you put this down. It's a card that I think is important to introduce because you've seen examples of other cards like the X card, which have very specific meanings, but I've seen examples of like the N card, and the N card is like, I'm approaching using an X. Well, sometimes you have to let people know something even though you're not approaching an X right away. Sometimes it's just important for people to know something, but you really want to make sure that they're like, I need you to snap out of it for a second, come back to me out of character, and pay attention. So, while I'm holding this up, I need you to pay attention. I will tell you what I need you to know, but then once it's gone down, we can immediately move back in to the game itself. It's a sign that it is just a temporary hold. As Requiem said, yeah, we have used the yellow card before. We've used the yellow card before in a couple of different situations. I believe one of the first ones that we used was during his one shot of 10 candles, but we have used it. We've even used it in Exaltwitch Academy, where it's been pulled out at various times just to indicate that a player's like, today I'm feeling a bit sensitive about this particular subject, or I have used it, in fact, because I needed to make sure that the audience was aware of something. In that particular case, it was that there were some jokes being tossed around about the age levels of characters and how that was relating to their romantic entanglements. And I had to make sure that everybody knew at that moment that all characters in the game were of age of consent, to make sure that people didn't sort of wonder whether it was creepy that somebody was hitting on somebody else. And then finally, we have the stop card. The stop card is red being one of those signs of stop alongside traffic lights, but it also contains the octagon, which is the universal symbol for stop. And inside the octagon is a red square, the audiovisual equivalent of stop what's going on. It's more final than the pause. A pause generally just freezes the image. Stop ends the show. So use the stop card if you're not okay to keep playing. This halts the game immediately. And once a resolution is found and everyone feels ready to keep going, the game can continue. So anyone showing that card is no longer okay to keep playing, and therefore the entire game has to stop so that steps can be taken to correct the issue. You use it when you need help. So, for example, maybe a scene has you feeling overwhelmed and you need some time to process. You're just an emotional wreck. Maybe someone's pressuring you into taking their tactical advice to the point where you're starting to feel bullied. Or maybe you're upset because somebody brought up a subject that makes you uncomfortable, whether you had discussed it with them previously or not. So, what do you do when somebody shows a red card? Or a stop card, I should say. Maybe everybody needs to take a short break. Perhaps people need to air their grievances and come to a compromise. Events in the game could be retroactively changed to avoid a particular pain point, but no matter what, the game won't resume until everyone says they're ready to keep playing. And however long that takes. It might mean that you've stopped playing for the day. It could even mean that you've stopped playing this campaign permanently. But only once everybody is okay to keep going. Once everybody has said that they are ready, can the game resume. Something that's important to note about both the pause and the stop cards, so I'll bring them both up here. Something that's important about these, sorry about the sloppy presentation here. I ended up trying to get these organized while I was doing other things. But one of the important things about these two cards is that you never have to justify your use of them. You never have to, you might have to mention why you're using them. If you're flinging up a red card, eventually it's probably important for you to say, I played the stop card because I am uncomfortable with this thing. But you never have to explain why you're uncomfortable with it, or to convince other people that it's important enough for you to have pulled a stop card or a pause card. Never, ever do you have to justify your use of them. What these cards are about it's an indication of how you feel. Your emotions are never up for debate. And what's important about these cards is that they're always about how you're feeling in the moment. That's what the design of these cards is about, as opposed to, I don't want this subject matter, or we have to rewind what just occurred. Instead, these cards indicate, out of character, unambiguously, this is how I am feeling at this current point in time. And then it opens the ability for others to help you with that. Or in the case of the green card, to make sure that people know that right now I'm feeling great. The green card doesn't necessarily mean, the play card doesn't necessarily mean I want to move further with what's happening right now, as I've seen some of those cards described. It does not mean that I am just feeling like I don't have a red or a yellow card to show, so I'll show a play card instead. It means I am feeling good about this, or I am specifically, I am okay to keep going. I'm okay to keep playing. Much in the same way that it's sort of like the difference between unenthusiastic and enthusiastic consent. Someone asks, hey, can I kiss you? And if the answer is, yeah, I guess you can kiss me. It's not terribly useful as soliciting consent. Clearly, this person doesn't feel great about it. But if the person says, "Yes, I would absolutely love for you to kiss me right now," that is enthusiastic consent, and we know that we can proceed. This is our equivalent of unambiguous consent. This is not our I revoke consent card. This is there's something that I need you to know card. But this is our I revoke my consent to play right now so that we can fix something. Yeah, and as Kate says, I mean, heck, you can be sobbing in character and you can throw a play card. You might not be feeling amazing, but you might be 100% okay to continue with the scene. If you're watching a sad movie, you might love the movie, but it might not feel great to see the moment where your favorite character is, losing everything that they care about. But at the same time, you are still enjoying yourself. When you're watching a horror movie, if you're feeling incredibly scared and frightened, but that's what you want to be feeling in that moment, again, you might not be feeling amazing, but you are definitely still okay with continuing. You are still enjoying what's occurring, even if it's not like fantastic. So that's why we have that kind of card. So let's look at the cards again. You'll notice that there's these two cards here at the bottom. So let's have a closer look at those. This is one card that's double-sided. First of all, these three cards have the same, it's the same on both sides of the card, so that you don't have to pick up a card and then figure out like which way do I have to hold it up. It's also so that if you're using this in LARP play, if you hold up a card, it will show the same thing to everybody who can see it, because these cards aren't necessarily only designed for tabletop play. But we also are going to be including an instruction card. So this side of the instruction card just shows what each of the three, the play, the pause, and the stop cards do. You can show the play card without interrupting the game to let everyone know that no matter what's happening in game, you're okay to keep going. When you need to warn everyone about something important, especially if you're approaching a personal limit, use the pause card. Once you put it down, the game can continue. And finally, use the stop card if you're not okay to keep playing. This halts the game immediately. Once a resolution is found and everyone feels ready to keep going, the game can continue. So that's one side of the instruction card. And hey, multi-center, this is something some friends and I have recently started implementing in our games. Although without cards, use a thumbs up or thumbs down system. Perfect. As long as you have a system. We're developing these tools for groups that feel like they can use this kind of system, but we recognize that that system isn't for everybody. But it is important to have a system that you can use. But let's look at the back of the card. So the back of the card indicates three of the most important elements of these rules that we think are important for people to know. The first is that no justification needed. Like I said, no one must ever be pressured to justify their use of a card. Using them is an indication of how you feel and your emotions aren't up for debate. The second is to err on the side of caution, because when it comes to safety, it's really important to be proactive. Someone clearly in distress, but not using a card may still need your help. Ask if you're not sure. It can feel definitely lame to kind of be like, hey, are you okay? But if somebody looks like they need help, it's important to know that just because you have access to these cards doesn't mean that they're easy to use. One of the things that we realized while testing, and remember, we've been playing together for years, we've known each other for even longer, we trust each other quite a bit, it can still be really tough to pull one of these cards sometimes. And if you see somebody who's clearly not okay, but they're not pulling up a card the way that you would expect, that doesn't mean that they're fine. The cards are not an excuse for you to say, well, they weren't showing a stop card, so everything's had to be fine, so I kept going. So we're making sure that we let people know that these cards are not, they're not like the only fail-safe that's needed here. Then we have go over the cards. And this might be one of the most important things. If the cards feel unfamiliar, they'll be difficult to use in a moment of crisis, which means that take 15 seconds at the start of each game to hold the cards and go over their use. And by going over their use, we generally mean going over this. So I have right here in my hands, I'm going to pull it up. I have a stopwatch. So are we ready? Oh, I pressed it and then I didn't realize that I'd pressed it. Okay. You can show the play card without interrupting the game to let everyone know that no matter what's happening in game, you're okay to keep going. When you need to warn everyone about something important, especially if you're approaching a personal limit, use the pause card. Once you put it down, the game can continue. And you can use the stop card if you're not okay to keep playing. This halts the game immediately. And once a resolution is found and everyone feels ready to keep going, the game can continue. So this was about 25 seconds, which means that we may have to modify exactly how many seconds we put. We might say 30 seconds instead of 15 seconds. But the reality, yeah, we should just say 30 seconds. Reality is that it takes 30 seconds to get everybody at the table to just go 1, 2, 3. And it might seem a little dorky to do this every session, but it is important for the same reason that when I'm running a show, when I'm running a theater show, if I've got people who are playing around with their weapons, their stage weapons, or even if there are no stage weapons, but there is still combat in the show, even if it's just as light as a shove, we do a fight call before every single performance where all the fights are run through. And at the beginning, we always call out, what is the safe word for these fights? Because there's a safe word when you have a theatrical combat, because then somebody can call the safe word and immediately the fight stops. It's to make sure that if you, for some reason, say you twisted your ankle, say you realize as you draw your weapon that the blade has a sharp edge when it was supposed to be dulled. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. So you have a safe word to make sure that people know, okay, so we're not going to fight here. And we call it out every single performance. And the reason we do is because when the moment strikes, when something serious happens, you do not want to be thinking, oh, what was the safe word? Shit. Was it blue? No. Was it dingo? No. Bastard. But by then somebody's already run you through. Same thing for RPGs. The reason we encourage people to do this every single session is because then the cards become a part of your equipment. Just like your character sheet, just like your dice, just like your drink. These go in front of you and they become a part of your gaming life. And it becomes a 30-second investment to make sure that when things go bad, and when I say when things go bad, that is a when, not an if. Like I said before, it will happen because role-playing carries risk with it, that you can mitigate the problems right away with these. As Moldy Saunter has said, which I think is quite important, it's good to reinforce that if there's some kind of issue, that it's okay for someone to express whether or not they're all right. Completely. Now, we have also additional rules that we're providing, but the cards that you see, these. So in fact, there are 4 cards. This is just, the bottom is just a double-sided card. What our plan is to put these cards into a deck that you can either print out yourself through a PDF that will become available on our website at no charge, which will have everything that you need to print these cards if you need them. You can make your own, right? We've used these plastic dividers, but we're also going to, our plan is once we've refined the design to a point that we're happy with it, we're going to be sending it off to drivethroughcards.com and makeplayingcards.com. Why 2? Because one of them is way better for Americans and the other one is way better for people who aren't Americans. And you can order decks of these cards printed out professionally, either on cardstock or on plastic, so that you can have a professionally produced, really nice cut product that you can include with your games. It also means that you can hand it to somebody and say, look, I spent the, $6 to buy this deck for everybody, because one deck will include several sets of these cards, because it's important. They will be cheap. We're not going to charge anything beyond the cost of manufacture for these cards. If we can. We're not sure. We have to go over that just to make sure that that's possible, but we believe that it is, because our intention here is not to make a profit with these at all, is to make sure that we can get these tools into the hands of people who might want them or need them. And there is a choice then for people to buy them, so that they're professionally printed and made, and they'll have the symbols in front of them. My hope is also that people can use these cards very specifically for large-scale LARP events. That these cards can be seen and universally understood as, okay, I see the play symbol, I see the green card, I see the circle. That means that this person is doing well. But that also somebody can really just raise that card high so that we can see that something needs to happen. And as Kate said, yes, you can also paper print and stick them in a card sleeve. You can do whatever you need to in order to make sure that these cards can work for you. But we want to provide them in as an attractive a package as we can, and as well designed a package as we can, to make sure that more people are interested in engaging with these cards. What are some of the other things that we're planning on including? What are some of the other information? So, how to use the cards. Hold the card up so that everyone can see it, and call out pause or stop if you're using one of those cards. So if you're doing this, you might say pause. There's something that you people need to know. Or you might say stop. I'm not okay to keep playing. But you don't need to do that with the green card, the play card, because that card is meant to be everything's fine and we can keep going without interrupting play. Now, here's the other thing. It is possible that somebody using these cards may be in distress. So if someone isn't holding the card up and is just sort of playing with it down here, or calling out pause or stop, or even if they're not using the cards at all, err on the side of caution and check in. It's also important to note that these cards are never about assigning guilt. A card being used does not usually mean that someone has done something wrong. You shouldn't avoid using a card because you're worried others may feel guilty. Just as you shouldn't take offense if someone else uses a card. Role-playing carries a certain level of emotional risk, and the cards are there to make sure that people feel safe and not judged. We feel like this is an important thing to make sure that people know, because it's the way that these cards are designed. It's not to say you just made me sad. The reality is that these cards are, I am feeling sad or upset or unsafe or whatever. And then we can drill down to what we can do to fix it. Because blame, not only does it not feel good, but blame is also unnecessary in a lot of these cases. I would even venture to say, depending on your group, most of them. If Kate brought something up in our game that really upset me, I have to imagine that she's not doing it deliberately. And even if she did, and even if I had spoken about it and she accidentally brings it up, these sorts of accidents can happen. And the important thing is not to then make Kate feel guilty that she brought it up, but just to make sure that I feel safe and therefore the rest of the group feels safe. So the cards are not about assigning guilt. You can flash them even if no one has done anything wrong. And in fact, most of the time, that's what will happen. Here, let's just see here. Will there be multiple instruction cards included with a print-on-demand option? That way, each player gets one along with the 3 safety cards. Yeah, it's really going to depend on the size of the deck. We want to make sure that we minimize cost without compromising the product. So it's going to depend on the print runs, because in general, I think you have to have a minimum number of cards. I think a lot of these places, the minimum is 16 that you need to put in, which means that we could potentially put in 4 sets with instruction cards for every player, or we could print out 5 sets with 1 instruction card. So we got to figure that out. We got to figure out what's best, because maybe we don't need 5 instruction cards and people would rather get 5 sets. A standard gaming group, depending on the games that you play, the most popular one, D&D, encourages 4 players and 1 DM, for instance, for D&D. Other games can vary. Some of them can go higher, some of them can go lower. We can also offer multiple different options, but like the more options that you give, sometimes it can make it more complicated. So it can be tough. Yeah, so check, is that what the shadow of check meant in LARPs? Check is a vague, it is, hey, everybody pay attention to me. Check would be the equivalent of this if you watch LARPs. Every single time that somebody calls out check, it was usually the equivalent of them holding up a pause card. It wasn't specifically mentioned as a safety rule. It kind of sort of was. And if we ever get a 3rd season around, believe me, safety rules are going to be a part of it. We've already discussed that internally, and it's absolutely going to be a thing. With the play card, you mentioned that it can be used as a check on other players. Might I suggest using a 4th card to prevent confusion? I could see a situation where somebody pulled the play card and somebody confusing it with them being okay with the scene rather than wanting them to check on their well-being. Just a thought. So it's a good thought. I don't think I agree. But if others want to weigh in, please do. First off, 3 cards is already a lot of cards to ask somebody to hold on to. And the more cards that you ask, the more complexity you're adding to this. We have right now play, pause, and stop. But play, pause, stop, and check could be a little bit more difficult for people to react to. Already these cards are designed to be used when somebody is in distress, and having to figure out which card to use may mean that groups will eventually just not use them at all. The other thing is that because the play card indicates that you're okay, it's okay if you flash it to somebody and surreptitiously, and that person might be reminded to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine. But if you flash the green card and somebody, like if you flash the green card and you give them a look, like what Kate did for me last session, the intent is pretty clear. I'm worried that with a 4th card, then it becomes, it adds a layer of complexity when it's not necessary, because if you flash a green card at somebody being like, are you okay? You are also at that point confirming that you yourself are okay. It's also kind of an edge case scenario use of these cards. An are you okay card, I'm also worried, then encourages overuse of them. We want to make sure these cards are used properly and that they're not abused. And I don't want someone to be like, hey, are you okay? Too often, because the point is people should feel like if they're not okay, that they should be using these cards and not wait to be asked. If somebody is waiting to be asked, are you okay? Then they might sit there in distress and wait for it. And I know that it sounds strange, but this is a common behavior among people who are experiencing emotional distress. They will not volunteer the information unless somebody asks them about it. And I want them to break free of that so that then they can say, I'm not okay, and advocate for themselves right away. But it is something that we have considered. I currently am not in that position right now, but it is absolutely something that we can keep looking at. But 4 cards starts getting to be, it's amazing how much of a difference 2 cards is. 1 card, asking somebody to carry on 1 card, that's okay. 2 cards, now it's twice as complex. 3 cards, now it's 3 times as complex as a single card. 4 cards, it actually starts getting exponentially harder to keep track of all of them, which is why the 4th card is invisible. Hey. Yeah, so Kate says you can also just point to the green card and then them, are you good? Yep, that is a way that you can do it. But yeah, showing, supposed to be house rules. You can also see fanning the deck as a default check. So this might be a way of doing it. That is actually something that I would consider as being like, showing all 3 cards is like, you okay? What do these cards apply? Which one of them? Which one of them? That might work. But again, if we also release a rules document that is, 15 pages long, no one's going to read it and no one's going to use it. It is unfortunate, but one of the most important things about health and safety is to be able to make sure that people can really quickly access the information and act upon it immediately. And if you make it too complicated, they just don't bother. So moving on for the other things that we've put in here, everyone should have a set of cards. So having your own set of cards makes them easier to use. They'll always be within reach, and they'll be as familiar to you as your other gaming supplies. This is one of the things that we are kind of trying to distinguish ourselves from there being a single X card on the table, or a single consent flower on the table. Other tools that we've seen. Again, not saying that these tools are bad, but that they don't necessarily work for us. Partially because, what if you can't reach the card? It becomes immediately harder to use. In distress, being able to do this with a small motion might be easier than you kind of having to reach. And then you're going out of your way to make a big show, which some players who are shy may then choose to not say anything as a result. The other thing that we mentioned is that when we say everyone needs cards, we mean everyone. Safety is crucial whether you're running a game or playing in a game. So a storyteller will also get a set of these. Absolutely. Because they are just as deserving and just as at risk as everyone else. And sometimes you have a player like Kate who has short arms. Yeah, and Over the Glen, like you said, a tool similar to a pencil or a character sheet or dice, this would be amazing to add to your tool belt. That's what we are hoping, that people will see these and be like, okay, yeah, do you have your dice? Yes. Do you have your safety cards? Yes. We're ready to go. One way that we can do this is that if you get a proper kind of plastic card like this, we could punch a hole in them so that you can hang them from a clip. So if you were using these in a LARP situation, then you might be able to put them on like a lanyard that you could then pull out and then hold up the correct card, depending on which one you needed to hold on to. But that it could be something that you can then carry with you, even if you didn't have pockets. Although, honestly, get pockets. Design your costumes with pockets, folks. It'll be very useful. They're the same as a box of 10 dice from Chessex, easily fit into a dice bag, or could be paper clipped to a character sheet. Yep. We want these to be a normal thing that you interact with. Even though hopefully for the stop card specifically, but also for the pause card, we hope that these don't have to come up that often, but we want them to feel familiar when they do. That's part of the reason why we also have the play card. The play card exists so that you're used to holding up a card. You're used to interacting with the cards. And let me tell you, as a storyteller and even as a player, it is hugely relieving if I see my players get heated emotionally. They do this, and immediately I know everything is fine. I pay attention to these things. Even with people who I've interacted with for a very long period of time, it's sometimes hard to tell when somebody has crossed that bridge between acting and feeling. And it can happen without warning. It can happen because of things that happened outside of game. Maybe earlier that day you found out that a family member was sick. So you come into game, you didn't tell anybody, but you're already feeling emotionally raw. And then the scene heats up, you start shouting. I don't necessarily know if your shouting is real or not. I play with actors. You think it's easy sometimes for me to tell whether or not they're genuinely feeling these things or not? It's why the cards are here, and why the green card, the play card, is one of my favorites. I mean, they're all my favorites, but at any rate. Cards are always out of character. They reflect how you feel and not your character. And often the point of role-playing games is to put characters in danger, but players or storytellers or whatever, they deserve to be safe at all times. Always. So this isn't like my character is feeling really sad right now. This is I'm feeling sad right now. My character is something that everybody shut up because my character's got strategy to propose. No. This is out of character. And not my character is feeling great right now. I am having a good time. I'm okay to keep playing. So it's very important that those cards maintain an out of character situation. So, multi-center, that's especially handy in arguments. I remember games where I was arguing with another character and it was tough to stay in it because I didn't know if they were genuinely upset or not and couldn't ask them without disrupting the game completely. That's a very good point. And this way, because that's why the play card doesn't pause the game. because it makes it easy for you to be like, yep, everything's great. We can keep playing. We don't even need to pause to acknowledge this card. We can just keep going. So something very important is we have to avoid false alarms. I mean, these rules aren't here to spoil your fun. They're actually to enhance your fun, but it's really important that you got to treat these cards with respect. They only work when everyone trusts that they're being used properly. So situations like the following are what you have to avoid. Because you want to fit in with the group, you show the play card when the group brings up sexual content, even though you'd rather it not be a part of the game. Or maybe because you're bored, you begin fidgeting with the pause card in your hands despite feeling perfectly safe and having nothing crucial to communicate out of character. Or finally, your character gets injured during a session and you, as a joke, hold up the stop card in mock protest, even though you're pretty happy with how the game's going. The problem with doing these things is that it then means that I have to start second guessing what happens when I see a card being used. I have to figure out if it's a joke. I have to figure out whether it's serious, or I have to figure out what somebody actually means it or not, which means that every time that you see a card is used, you gotta treat it like the real deal. This goes back again to what happened last session when I was inadvertently touching the yellow card and Kate checked in with me because she had to make sure that I wasn't actually feeling uncomfortable and just unwilling to show the yellow card properly, because she knows that I take these cards seriously and she takes these cards seriously. So we can follow along with that. And it's much the same way that you shouldn't pull down a fire extinguisher to put out a candle on your table, right? That's not the tool. That's not what the tool is for. A fire extinguisher is for a fire that can pose a danger to somebody and is out of control. Similar to these cards. These are being used when they need to be used. I like how the music got more somber when it got to the avoid false alarm section. So that is, in sum total, the design that we have for the cards. We have the three colors, green, yellow, and red, to match traffic lights, which is a recognized symbol around the world. We have our circle, triangle, and octagon. The circle generally meaning go or proceed, a triangle meaning warning or caution, and an octagon meaning stop. And our symbols, the play symbol, the pause symbol, and the stop symbol, in order to really highlight what these cards are for. The cards are color-coded, symbol-coded, and of a size that can fit in easily with your gaming supplies, but also be visible if you pull them out. They will be available for you to print out yourself or make yourself. We don't care. Use them however you wish, or make them however you wish. We will be able to provide ways for you to get these cards professionally printed and delivered to you so that you can have them. Drive-through cards prints them on cardstock, very similar to the cardstock that you'll find for collectible card games like Magic. Make Playing Cards will also print them on those cardstock, but we also have the option of printing them on plastic so that they'll be a bit more durable. You can always sleeve these cards in clear plastic sleeves as well. Thank you for the follow. That's really kind of you, Moldy Center. But these cards will be available along with the instruction cards so that you can show everybody how important these are to you. And also, I admit that this is true for myself. I like having premium products at my table. I enjoy having the dice that I choose. I like having a nice wooden box to carry my dice in. When I print my character sheets, I generally prefer to do it in color. I fill my character sheets out digitally so that it prints out really nicely. And I like to have my safety cards be just like that. Because in the end, the safety cards are a part of my gaming kit. They will go with me wherever I game. And I want them to feel great, so I will have the option to have them printed professionally. And if you want to go at it with crayons, do it. Yeah, absolutely. Completely. But this is our current system. We've had other examples. I can show you some things, like we had designs that had symbols in the corner so that if you were holding a card, it would show in both corners. but in testing that didn't really pan out. We had different symbols like a check mark, an exclamation mark, and an X, but it became a question of like, well, does the exclamation mark mean that things are bad, or does it just mean like a solid snake over somebody's head? A check mark seemed pretty good, but the X, does that make it the X card? The X card is a very separate tool that we used, so we decided against those. We also wondered whether we wanted to put the text on the opposite side of the card so that you could see exactly what they were for. But then it came up that not only do we want the card to be seen from all sides, but we also don't want somebody to have to pick up the card and figure out which side they want to present. And we don't want to actually encourage players to have the instructions right in front of them. We want the instructions to be read at the beginning of each game to get people used to them. And it's a little less likely that someone would do that if it was always written on the cards themselves. We had the idea of going with different negative space. So here we see that the symbols are white with an outlined symbol. And here we see the defined symbols using white and using the negative space of the white to show the symbols, which we feel improve their visibility. And we also wanted to see how they would look to somebody who could not perceive color at all, although that is extremely rare. It is still a thing that we wanted to see. Also remember that if you're playing in low light, maybe it would be harder to distinguish colors. So we wanted to make sure that the symbols could be recognized. And we saw that a circle and an octagon didn't necessarily look all that different, but they were easier to tell apart when you had the play symbol and a stop symbol in them. At one point we had on this side, we wanted to have the text be smaller, but we ended up going with a different layout there. We also had at one point the idea that maybe we would include the text on the instruction cards on color blocks, but there's some concern that this may not print as clearly as we would like. Black text on white tends to be easier to read. And then we have black on the text and we have white on the text. The white on the text has a small black outline on them. We're still going back and forth on these to see whether we want to have it be black on these colors or white on these colors with the outline. But whichever one we pick, it will be because of visibility issues and to make sure that they're easily read. So those are the examples that we came up with. Just to give, and this is far from final in terms of how many iterations we went through with these. We've been going over and over and over them. The text that we have written for these, we have done over and over and over again. It's very difficult to come up with ideas that can be presented concisely and yet completely. So this is the result of a lot of experimentation on our parts to make sure that we get these done. And as Kate said, we'll also do some test runs for the yellow and really all of the cards due to the difference between RGB screens and CMYK printing. Yeah, we're going to, before we make sure that we put these out so that people can order them, we're going to order them ourselves and see what they look like before we send them along. So we'll be running some test prints to make sure that we're happy with them. I have a feeling like we will be, but we want to make sure, right? We want to make sure that these are a quality product that you could potentially enjoy. And as I said, we're hoping to make sure that this will cost the minimum required. One thing that we do know is that the cost of one of these decks, a single deck, hopefully is going to cost under 10 American dollars. And I think that that's a very doable thing. With shipping, that kind of depends on where you live. I do know that it also gets cheaper the more decks that you order in some cases, and it depends on what materials you're choosing. But we're trying to make sure that it costs as little as possible because we think that it's important that people get the chance to order these if they so choose. But because it may be that these costs are not what you want to pay, or maybe you want something more personalized or custom to you, we will be making a PDF available that will have all of this information, including the expanded instructions, the instruction cards, and the 3 safety cards themselves available for printout so that you can just handle them on your own. Yeah, or 10 cents for your printer paper and ink. Because maybe you don't care and you would be happy to print these out. One thing that you could absolutely do is print out 2 copies, put them on either side of an existing magic card that you don't need, put them in a clear plastic sleeve, and now you have something with the thickness of a card, but that you've printed out yourself. So all of these things are options. So now that we've spoken about these a bunch, I'm curious what you think. Curious if there's anything that you would immediately say that you would change about these cards. We had Requiem mentioning about a 4th card, which as much as I say that I don't necessarily agree with that right away, is absolutely something that we're going to hold on to and look at. Or the idea of potentially, instead of just having the green card check in to investigate what it might be like, to do the fan check in of like, which card are you right now? Which card are you right now? So that is and all suggestions are getting documented. So you can either bring them up here on chat with us right now, or you can contact us on our Discord, where we will be taking any and all suggestions about these. We are going to get like hopefully soon, I can't guarantee when, but hopefully soon we'll get a preliminary version up online of these documents so that people can see them. We'll at least post some images so that people can have a look at them. And because we want your feedback. It's with your help that we're going to make sure that these cards are the best that they can be, to make sure that the games can be as good as they can be for everybody. The only possible suggestion is slightly enlarge the center symbols, like 20%. We do want to make sure that there's still enough negative space that we can see them, but we can absolutely look into that. Part of the problem is, of course, is that a circle, a triangle, and an octagon don't contain the same surface area, but maybe the symbols are too small, so we'll have a look. We do want to make sure that there's enough color surrounding the areas themselves, so that the color still is a very distinct part of the design. But yeah, using the white as a negative space is something that I think Kate came up with, which I really liked. So keeping that green card up front with the fan checking. Yeah, so that is one of the things that I'm wondering about, is the fan too complicated? Because I would have to, if I did, hey, are you okay? Well, now this looks like I'm flashing a yellow card, even though I have other cards behind it. And to be like, hey, are you okay, might seem a little too fiddly. This might still just be the simplest, be like, you all right? Or, you okay? Like pointing at somebody with the card. Or we may just leave it out entirely and let groups come up with their own ways of checking in. But it's something that we're going to test, because I do think that the 3 cards is a great symbol of, hey, is everything all right? But we'll see if we can find a way to make it work. Or maybe the concerns that I have aren't actually that concerning, right? Sometimes I look at an idea, I initially don't like the idea, but I think about it for a week and then I love it. So a 4th green card that will work in front of a green screen for people that stream, maybe. Or an alternate color set. Yeah, that might actually be something that we can include, because one of the things is that the services that we're going with are print on demand. So it doesn't actually cost us any extra to upload a separate deck. The only thing it costs us is time. So maybe something that would provide for a different color for this would be a good idea, because as we've shown, if you are in front of a green screen, if the green is too similar, it just won't come up at all. So that could be a very interesting idea. When playing online with cameras, view space is small. So one of the things, of course, that you can do is, knowing that you have the 3 words play, pause, and stop, you can put that in chat if you're playing online. I mean, if I was in front of a camera and I did this, that is pretty obvious. Right? Like, this is also blank. I can even, if I wanted to, I could blank my face out and just be like, no, stop. Or in this case, pause, stop. Or, yeah, I'm okay. Well, not that card. yeah, I'm okay. So you can do it on camera, but part of the reason why we encourage someone to say pause or stop while using the cards is A, if someone's not looking at you, then the card isn't as useful, but B, because there may be situations in which somebody can't see the card. So, and yeah, there are other ways to show colors as well. There are examples like, for instance, we may be able to provide an oversized set. Drive-through cards only has, I think, one size of cards that you can use, maybe. I'd have to look into that. Oh, no, they have like tarot-sized cards. So we might be able to provide oversized cards for people who would prefer a larger set. But we do feel like the standard 3.5 by 2.5 inch is a pretty good size because that's easy to carry around. I won't lie, looking at these cards makes me think Uno. Don't know why, and it is not a criticism at all. Love what you have, but I have my random thoughts from time to time. So that's part of it, right? Uno, part of the reason why Uno is such a popular game is because its visual design is tight. It is done very, very well. You recognize when Uno is being played because the cards look so distinct. Otherwise, you could just play Crazy Eights, right? Like Uno is basically Crazy Eights, but they made the deck so distinct and pleasing to look at that it worked out for them. And that's kind of what we're going for. So I think we're probably going to wrap up the stream here. We're already over a little over time because we started late, unfortunately. That's my bad. But please keep us posted and keep us informed. Discord is the best place to do that. We really want to stress that these are only going to be amazing if we have people looking at it, commenting on it, saying what works for them, saying what doesn't work for them. Remember that one person's opinion can change everything, or it can change nothing, right? Like if you come up with something that is a brilliant idea, we want to be able to use it. If you come up with something and we don't necessarily agree, it still helps us test and prove what we already have. So it is everything that you can tell us is valued and important. And I would love to see these cards make it out there someday. So if with your help, we might be able to help make gamers safer overall. Tomorrow is going to be twitch.tv/Elizabeth A. Neal over that's Punchy at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Liz and Scott will be playing some more games. I think they're still playing Punch Club right now. On Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time is the Exalt Twitch Academy rewatch. That'll be episode 14. So if you don't get a chance to tune in on Sunday evenings when we normally play, you can tune in with people who just want to chat about game in real time while you're watching. 3 p.m. on Elizabeth's channel, there's going to be more Drew Crew. 5 or 6 p.m. it will be Doomed with Scott, possibly the Crosshair as well. And on Sunday, it will be Exalt Twitch Academy episode 15 at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Special thanks, of course, to Real Brick Wall for his hanging out here with us alongside our other moderators, Aragorn and the Crosshair. Please just have a look at our Discord. It would be great to see that. But most of all, thanks if you're a new follow. I know we've got Moldy Center. Thanks for following us there. It's always good to see you, Zen of Games, and also Over the Glen. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. I probably will. I almost certainly will. Luke, it's been good to see you recently. Angel Wick, great to have you around. Requiem, Kung Fu Fenris, lots of great people. We had Creaty Chameleon come in earlier today. So thanks so much for everybody for tuning in. It's very appreciated. With your help, let's do something cool. But until then, just use your word holes. See you next time.